All right. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. We're really excited. We have an opportunity to speak to Ben April, our Chief Technology Officer here at Maltego. Before we get started, a few housekeeping things and maybe a few introductions here as well. My name is Justin Gormajo. I help to lead sales efforts here in North America for Maltego. We have a really great team that's supporting our efforts across the world, and I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation today because one of the best parts about being in this role is hearing from thought leaders and being able to benefit from some of the conversations we're having from practitioners and other members of the community. So really excited today to talk to Ben April, who is born from that industry, born from that community, and is here with Maltego now as a member of the executive team to really help lead and shape the direction of our company moving forward, working with his colleagues and peers. Few housekeeping topics before we hand it over to Ben for some further conversation. But first and foremost, we want to make sure that this is an interactive webinar to the extent that we want to offer an opportunity for all of our participants to share a question. And the best way to do that is first to find the little question mark that's in the chat bubble, and that'll open up the question submission box so that as we go here, we can be going through that and again, reviewing any questions that you may have. The scope of our conversation and the discussion today is really, first and foremost, we want to be mindful of the time, but also we want to make sure that we're covering topics that are most relevant to some of the concepts and kind of the thinking behind some of the roadmap that we're going to share today. If you do have any questions that are maybe outside of that, or that you would like us to dive a little bit deeper into any of those topics, please use that question and answer feature. We'll be sure to reach out and address as many of those as possible. And if not, we can set up some time afterwards to discuss further. And with that being said, if there are no other questions or topics to discuss here at the top of the webinar, I want to have a chance for Ben to share a little bit about his journey. So Ben, again, is our Chief Technology Officer, again, born and raised kind of within this community as a practitioner and as a kind of really passionate thought leader here. Ben, thank you so much for joining and for being a part of this conversation. You and I have kind of known each other for the last 5 or 6 years, which is really exciting to see kind of your journey. I wonder if you could share with the audience here a little bit more about kind of maybe how you arrived at Maltego, a little about your background and what made Maltego such an exciting opportunity for you.
Cool, thanks, Justin. Yeah, quick version. I started in the internet space in the late 90s. Every time I say that, I feel a little more dated. Back when, it was a dial-up ISP, a couple hundred phone lines strung onto modems, ripped out of their commercial plastic cases, and I did everything from plumbing to technical support. That's where I learned to build routers, learn protocols, learned all the key pieces of internet infrastructure. I followed that path upstream through 2 other ISPs, finally working at a global backbone carrier, building tools and systems that did their provisioning. So, configuring routers at massive scales. From there, jumped over to security at about the same time that the .com bubble burst in the early 2000s. Ended up working at Trend Micro for a few years, did some product development, did some threat research. One of my favorite parts of my career was working with the forward-looking threat research team over there. That's where I actually got my hands on Maltego for the first time. I had been an avid user, and very quickly in my time there, I started building transforms for any crazy piece of data I could get my hands on. It got to the point where people had to tell me to stop. It was so much fun, and it was so powerful for the investigations I was doing. I was looking at internet infrastructure, so looking at BGP, DNS, things like that, trying to understand not only how the internet works, but how criminals leverage it to their advantage. From there, made the jump over to Farsight Security, where I eventually encountered you. I was there about 8 years. Justin came along and was one of our sales reps there, and we got to know each other, and it's actually really did enjoy working with Justin there and here. There's a nice dichotomy between the technology and the business side, and we have some useful conversations. Really exciting. Farsight Security was acquired by Domain Tools. And then we both went over there. And not long after that, I had the opportunity to jump over to Maltego and start doing start leading the product and technology team. And coming from my background, both as an experienced analyst and as the technical lead of a data provider, that seemed to make a pretty good culmination of the highlights of my career so far. And really excited to be here, really excited to kind of align what I had always wanted to see in Maltego into our long-term roadmap, and super excited to be at a point where we can start sharing pieces of it. We should probably mention this is going to be an ongoing series. No one should come away from this webinar thinking this is all we have up our sleeve. These are the pieces we're ready to talk about now. We'll do this again soon and release more and kind of continue to run that information flow.
Love it. Thank you, Ben. And yeah, it's actually a great segue. One of the things for us that, especially in the kind of the go-to-market side, is really understanding a little bit of the why. So many of our customers want to understand the why, not just of kind of what exists in the product today, but the why of our roadmap, the why of kind of what is driving the innovation that is helping to align our products to the kind of evolving needs of our customer base. I'm wondering if maybe as a way to start the conversation today before we dive directly into the roadmap, I'd love to
Sure.
hear a little bit more maybe about your thinking and maybe even how your experience prior to Maltego helped to inform and shape how you think about the problems that are being solved by the kind of vendor community today, and how that helps to inform the roadmap for Maltego.
So every step along the way, I've been very fortunate to work in an environment with a really clearly defined why. Everyone on the team had a shared goal, and every time we were making the world a better place. How that manifests varied from time to time, but in general, we all had a really cohesive shared feeling that what we were doing was actually having an impact. Be that performing investigations that actually we didn't always get attributed to it, but we'd occasionally get to see a takedown or a bust that we know who did it. We know who it was. We were in on that. We provided data to make that happen. And then all the way to at Farsight, we were providing the data to make those things possible, and providing the visibility and the intelligence to generate that kind of result. Maltego just feels like the right next step in terms of, okay, I've generated the data, I have generated the investigations, and now what I want to do is really focus on providing the best possible tool for any type of investigation to really enable that kind of takedown. And the stuff we see from our customers and users when they talk to us about what they're doing and what they're accomplishing, CSAM, child exploitation, human trafficking, all these really horrific factors in our life right now, the fact that arrests are happening because of some of the capabilities we're providing, that really drives a lot of my focus in terms of, we've got to make sure that every step along the way, the integrity of the investigation remains intact. How do we make new cool features, new powerful features, and deploy them to users in a way that doesn't impact their ongoing work? But we want to add that capability, but we also don't want to derail something. The last thing I want to hear is that, hey, your new product feature caused us to miss the guy. So that's a key focus for me.
So, you touched on something that I think is really maybe important, especially as we kind of see our digital footprint across all industries, across all kind of technologies, et cetera, really expanding. We come from a predominantly cybersecurity background. Maltego is not solely for cybersecurity, right? You're talking about law enforcement. We have a lot of government customers, trust and safety teams. What is it about Maltego that makes it such a unique tool that it can span use cases and even kind of, again, like categories of vendors that may make it kind of a unique solution in the market today?
I think part of that is it's really focused on the investigator mindset, trying to take it all the way back down to first principles, creating nodes and links, and how do these nodes relate to each other? What can I learn from that? What kind of connections can I draw? What inferences can I make from that kind of base level sequence? And then layering on top of that the ability to access literally any data set you can think of and map that into this data structure. One of the cool things I saw when I first started, they had the hub team had added transforms for flight aware data. You put in flights and figure out how someone might get from point A to point B. That's not something you immediately think of when you think cybersecurity, but if you're tracking individuals or if you're planning trips, that might be a useful tool. The data model has evolved over the years, and it's one of the things that's pretty high up on our roadmap in terms of priority. We know we need to do some work there, but the fact right now it's very flexible and it enables you to capture almost anything you can imagine into an investigation.
I love that. It's something that's really great to be able to kind of speak to when we're talking to practitioners and even our customer base about kind of the diversity of use cases. And that might actually be a great segue for us to talk about the roadmap a little bit. So we talked a little bit about kind of the why of you arriving at Maltego and some of the
Yep.
opportunity you saw here. How is that, I guess, guiding the roadmap that we're going to talk about today?
I should mention a couple things as we get there. I've been here about a year, and it's been a very busy year. We had the Charles Bank acquisition. We're now ISO 27001 certified. We've had a lot on the plate. So there's been a lot of things happening, but there's also been a lot of planning going on in the background. Kind of first and foremost, the main pillar of this stage of my roadmap is that we're going to get to doing regular releases. Back in my early days of using Maltego, it was kind of one of those let's release every other year whether we need it or not kind of thing. And for good reason. It was a small team. They were doing some really cool stuff, but it's hard to release a big product like this. Since then, Maltego Technologies now has a pretty robust engineering team. We have processes and pipelines that we can generate releases. Yesterday, the second major release, or I should say minor release, minor version during my tenure here was released. So 4.5 is in the world. 4.4 was the first piece of this plan, and that included like major UI improvements, a number of bug fixes, and really just kind of starting to get that freight train rolling. Really, what we're looking for is consistent, repetitive releases that continue to add value without impacting usability. So that's one piece. The next piece is we're really looking at transform capability and really how to advance that. So the big piece there, as was released as part of the 4.5 version, is the version 3 transform protocol. So this is brand new, and we'll do some demos here in a second, but it offers some pretty impressive capabilities. The ability to feed a graph into a transform, so the transform can analyze and report on that graph, as well as return a graph from a transform. Up until now, if you run a transform on an entity, the only thing you can get back is new entities that connect to that original. From here on out, we can actually return an entire graph to you. It feels very kind of high level and esoteric, but when you start actually seeing it in action and start playing with it and start building transforms that use it, it really kind of changes the world. It's a pretty exciting step.
Yeah, I'm sure that's exciting to a lot of our users, and we'll be excited to see the demo here. Just one last point, maybe before we go into some of the actual demo piece here, but the roadmap itself and some of these releases and the improvements.
Yep.
You mentioned that you've been a user for many years and had your own kind of wish list of improvements. Where else are we sourcing some of the feedback that's helping to inform, the roadmap and what we're prioritizing as far as kind of updates and improvements?
Yeah, oh yeah, great question. So we're collecting from various sources. Obviously, we want to hear from users and customers. I'm spending a lot of time at various conferences talking to investigators and people in the field. In terms of conferences, Justin and I will both be at Black Hat next week.
Come see
so
us. Yeah.
come see us at the booth. Required booth plug. But yeah, we're looking a lot of places. We have part of my product and tech team. We've got a user experience research group who is working with customers. We'd love to have more people interested in working with us. We want to be very careful about your time. We definitely understand someone taking down human traffickers probably has better things to do, but we'd absolutely love to get your input. Many sources, including past roadmaps here at Maltego, and my experience from the things I've wanted for years. They're definitely on the list, and I can probably tease that there are a handful of commonly requested features that are that are coming. But part of kind of my background here is that I'm very adamant that we're gonna do it right. There are things we could do faster, but if that results in a less than effective user experience or a less than effective investigation integrity, that's a problem for me. So we're looking very carefully at the sequence of events and how we piece this together so we can really make it a good experience for everybody, make sure that our quality is kind of up to Maltego standards along the way.
Yeah, I love hearing that, and yeah, I think this is a great opportunity maybe to start showcasing some of the improvements, and talk a little bit more about the specifics of what these kind of upgrades and this roadmap means for our users. So if this is a good time for you, Ben, I think we should maybe transition over to a demo, showcase
Yep.
some of those capabilities, and then we'll leave some time for questions afterwards.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna switch over here and roll some tape. I pre-recorded this, so I don't have to bribe the demo gods. But here we go. All right, let's get the client started. This is the 4.5.0 version released on August 2nd, 2023. As you'll see when it gets open, the UI is pretty much the same as the 4.4 series. All right, let's pull up an example of a sticks file. I'm going to use the Oasis CTI doc poison ivy example. It's a pretty stock JSON file. Shouldn't surprise anybody. So we're going to create a new graph here. We're going to add the URL to that document. It could be a URL to any sticks JSON document. And then we're going to run this new get graph. And this is going to download the JSON, and then it's going to parse it and provide a graph of all the entities referenced in that document. You'll notice it returned the entire graph, not just a single layer of entities based on the initial URL. Graph out is one of the key capabilities of the new version 3 transform protocol. So let's look at another example now, this time looking at Bitcoin blockchain. So we'll drag over Bitcoin entity and plug in an address, bookmark it just so it's easy to track. So for this demo, I'll use Tatum Blockchain Explorer, and we're just going to walk step by step down the chain, starting from this initial address and just kind of incrementing each one. You'll see it's kind of can be an arduous manual process where every step of the chain we're going to have to manually run the transaction. Again, this is the 2.0 protocol, so this is where we're returning entities that are connected with the subject entity when running a transform. Now I'm going to install some prototype transforms we have for Tatum Blockchain that leverage the new version 3 graph out capability. Let's just take a moment here to following the standard hub process. And we'll go back here. We've bookmarked in green everything that we've manually discovered. And now I'm going to run the new peel chain transform going down. And you'll see that it actually picks up where we left off. The results that come back from the transform, where they match what we've already done, merge in with the graph as you'd expect any other transform to do. And then they continue to scale out laterally. You'll notice this transform is taking a little while. It's kind of running longer than a lot of transforms tend to. That's another capability in the version 3 of the transform protocol. We call it long running or asynchronous transforms. The idea that you can do other things while one long running transform is going on. You've also got the ability to run a transform longer than you otherwise would. So the timeouts have changed. So here I'm actually going to run another transform while this one is still going. Just to kind of show that it's continuing to operate. Yeah, pops a new one up there. So we can pull up the transform list, listing all the running transforms, and we can decide, I've only set the slider to 4K. I may decide I've got enough to work with, and I can pick any node and run this transform again if I need to go deeper. So I'll stop it here. This, for me, is a really powerful demonstration of what the new V3 transform capability can really do. We started with one entity. Now we've got this huge graph, all the context that comes along with it, and all of the inter-entity relationships came along for the ride. While we're at it, we handled transforms that take a long time to execute. Now let's shift gears and look at an example of V3's graph-in capability. We'll start with two entities. Let's look at two people in the Open Sanctions database and see if we can find a connection using the Open Sanction transform set. So first I'm going to walk through manually using the current Open Sanctions transform set. We get a handful of possible candidates. Having worked this a couple times, I know which ones aren't relevant, so we'll delete those. And now we're left with a pair of open sanction person entities that match our targets. So we'll switch the layout for easy viewing. And now we'll do some detailed search. We'll look for a couple different, we'll use open sanctions to look for a couple different types of connections and see if we can find a link between the two people. So we'll select all these assets. So grab the sanctions. Still no connection. How about agents? No. So I'm going to continue to try a number of different transforms here in this set, stepping through, hoping to find some combination that connects the two clusters. It gives me some indication that these two actors are somehow connected with each other. Now, so far, I don't see any connections. We could go, one by one down this list. We could also write a machine to do this to some degree. The challenge with the machine is that it doesn't actually have enough context to decide whether or not it's found a successful link. Your graph would also be loaded down with the results of every transform you ran. So we'll try one more thing. We'll try other links, and yeah, there we go. We found our connection between the two clusters. So that's how you approach this particular problem in the current version of the Maltego transform protocol. Now I'm going to enable the development transforms we have working for Open Sanctions and show you what it could be like. And this is going to allow us to use graph-in, and instead of manually stepping through a bunch of things, we're going to select the two people we're trying to search for, and we'll copy them into a new graph. And we're just going to run one transform. We're going to run the Open Sanctions find path. And this is going to work on the back end. And we're done. That was easy. All right.
All right. Well, I have to say, for anyone who's watching that is familiar with kind of how manual of a process a lot of those things can be, and certainly from any of the customers that we've spoken to, this is really exciting. And I'm sure that it's going to open up a whole door of other possibilities as well that are going to streamline a lot of the workflows that today can be very manual and require a lot of kind of training and enablement in order to be able to know which transforms even to perform in order to accomplish kind of that end goal. This really, I think, shortens that time to seeing value, which is great, and certainly opens up again a whole new world of possibilities for our customers and for our platform on the whole. And speaking of which, and we're going to get into the questions here in a moment, but what is there anything that you can kind of like tease about what's coming up in some future releases? Anything that might be, aligned to, some, again, customer feedback or things that top priority for you? What can we know now that might be, down the road?
Yeah, so I'll mention two things coming up. One of them is what we're calling OSINT Profiler. Stop by Black Hat and come see a demo. Imagine a very simple interface to generate a kind of pre-planned machine via a web browser. Very, very simple investigations, but it's kind of a kickstart for newer analysts or people who aren't even analysts day by day, but the ability to run some quick analysis and get some information going. And then you can actually just pass that investigation off to an analyst via a Maltego graph. It's all integrated. The other thing is what we're calling Maltego ID. So this is really going to revolutionize our user management system. It's going to tie into your organization's single sign-on SAML kind of infrastructure. Eventually, we'll phase out license keys, and you will log in with an account, be that to our platform or to your own on-premise system. You'll no longer have to maintain the spreadsheet of who's got which license key and do that dance. It will all be tied in with one central portal. It's going to include accounting and auditing and all the enterprisey features that modern companies need.
Love that. Okay, awesome. Well, you had mentioned early on in this discussion that this is not the only discussion we're going to be having on this topic, but in fact, this is a
Certainly.
series that will be continuing down the road here. So we'll be excited to get more details as they come. Okay, let me make sure that we get to some of these questions. We had a couple of really good questions regarding one, do Maltego transforms now support multi-hierarchy returns of entities?
That's graph out, exactly.
Love that. Yep. Okay, perfect. And how about support Unicode strings?
Let me back that up and say, yes, we have the support in the client now. Not all the transforms are updated. That will be a rolling process, and we're going to work with data partners, and we'll work with our customers who want to do it with their own internal data. So the capability does exist. It is not universally rolled out. As I understand, as of this morning, the transforms I demoed are available in the hub if you've got the new version of the Maltego client.
Awesome. Okay, great. Piggybacking off of that, do we support Unicode strings?
There is Unicode in terms of getting responses back. I'll need to check on the status of a couple open issues, but there is some open work to finalize and really complete the Unicode. I think there are a couple cases where in certain search boxes it doesn't work right, but I'll look into that. I know it's in work.
Okay, wonderful. And then one last one here, just talking a little bit about, how long did it take to get those processes and infrastructure in place to support ongoing and continual releases?
It took a decent amount of time. The V3 transform protocol was one of the core elements of a prior plan to release kind of a whole new major version that included a bunch of new features. And since joining, we refactored that plan and we turned it into a continuous stream of updates. Part because we want to incorporate user feedback and bug repairs faster, but also in part we want to get a more streamlined approach and not break backwards compatibility. So that took us the better part of a year to really build up the infrastructure. If you want to be more direct about it, it took us close to 5 years to really build the team and build the process. It took a while, but I think it's going to lead to a nice sustainable flow.
Wonderful. And I'll get to one last one here. I know we're getting close to time. There was a question that came across regarding customers developing their own transforms. Is there public documentation where people can start to learn how to do that themselves?
There absolutely is for the published TRX version of the protocol. That's available on GitHub. Right now, we're kind of starting slow with the version 3. Reach out to your account team. The documentation is there, but we really want to kind of work through the process and make sure we understand what people need to know about getting started. Because it's adding complexity to the protocol and it's adding complexity to the user experience, we're still kind of fine-tuning the language, how to describe this transform really, how to describe what a given transform accepts and potentially, what a transform returns. So yeah, reach out. We're happy to talk about it and happy to get people on the road, but we want to kind of be careful and make sure that we're not causing more confusion than help.
Yeah, makes sense. And one last question before we let you go, Ben, and thank you again for all the time. In terms of the new version, the 4.5 that's available, are we asking customers, should they just be able to kind of update the existing, or do they have to uninstall the old version and install the new one for it to work?
It should be a drop-in replacement. There should be a little pop-up down in the bottom corner that says, hey, do you want to update to version 4.5? And I'll say this, that kind of in my thoughts about this are, if you're in the middle of a sensitive investigation that's very timely and very urgent, don't click the button. Get through what you need to do
Yeah.
with the tools and when you have a moment, go ahead and click the button. Give it a try. We very much welcome, and we'll take all the input we can get from a user perspective. Like I said, we're trying to get better and faster at reacting to that and responding. So we'd like to get this to be a real conversation. Okay.
Awesome. Well, look, for everyone that joined today, thank you so much. For anyone who asked any questions, I think we may have left a couple unanswered, but please feel free to reach out to us directly. Happy to spend some time. For any of them that's an existing customer, we have an entire customer support team that's here to make sure that you have any resources that you need to get the most value from your relationship with Maltego. So please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. I'll be happy to point you in the right direction. And again, really appreciate your time, Ben. This was really insightful, and we'll look forward to future discussions and kind of roadmap highlights. But thanks for all the hard work you're doing. I know I certainly appreciate it, and I'm sure our customers do as well. And thank you for organizing this. Appreciate the time,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you, Justin. Come see us at Black Hat. We'll be
That's
happy to
right.
show you more. We'll be happy to demo in person and talk about other things that are coming and answer your questions. Stay tuned. There'll be more blog posts along the same lines with new details and new capabilities coming down the road.
Love
Thanks.
it. Hey, thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.